So electricity tariffs are up, so is water tariffs, and in the last few days we've heard from organized labor, but tonight we're also going to be hearing from the utility companies themselves. Is it enough? And you begin to see that there is this clash between the organized labor. They are asking government to withdraw the tariff increases, and then you also hear from the utility companies saying what they got is simply not enough. So what did they get? They got, as far as electricity is concerned, the ECG got 9 cedis, 86, 9.86% increase in electricity tariffs is what they got. Yeah, you wish it was just 9 cedis, 86 pesos, but it isn't. It's 9.86% of an increase for electricity. And then there was water, 15.92% it was that went up. Of course, you can forgive me because we're all hoping that it was just that, what it was. But it isn't. It's in percentage terms. And so this translates in real terms. If you're paying 100 cedis, as far as electricity is concerned, a month, and you'll be very lucky to be paying this in this country right now. You'll be paying, in real terms now, 109 cedis, 86 pesos. That's what I was thinking about. I like money. And so I was thinking in monetary terms, I'm a capitalist. So yeah, you have to price that in when I'm talking about percentages. And then you have water. If you were paying 100 cedis before, you're going to be paying 115 cedis, 92 pesos. Now, you think this isn't much, but if you do the cumulative effect of that, and what do you pay on a monthly basis? Electricity, you possibly be paying on an average of close to some 1,000 cedis, right? And many people pay way more than that. And so that then cumulatively adds a bit of burden to your pocket. And so we're hearing the organized labor make some complaints, but you need to also factor in what were the real factors that led to this particular increase. Capital expenditure is one. There's a lot of work that is happening with upgrading the power plants, but also the water treatment plants. And talking about that, you have to factor in the effect of illegal mining, which has become more costly now. The equipment for the treatment of the water itself has become weak, moldy, and rickety. That has to be replaced. That is a problem. Exchange rates a problem. Inflation is a problem, although it's been tamed largely. Fuel cost is another one. And then you have the generation mix that all are factored into the rate that we've seen. And then you look at this tariff adjustments over time. This, by the way, is a major tariff adjustment. Over time, you'll see that this year's one pales in comparison to what we've seen before. In 2022, we talked about some 27% increase, 27.15% increase in 2022. The last time we had a major tariff adjustment. And then for water, you had 21.55% increase at the time, right? If you compare to now, it really pales in comparison. And I'll tell you what happened at the time when organized labor and what their position were on the time. TUC's point basically today is what your government had decided to do is giving us something and taking it back with the other hand. They say the tariff increase is going to erode in the wage gains that they've made. I'll talk about that because they've negotiated with government. You have the lack of consultation. They said they were not consulted at all. But I recall very clearly that the PLC and the utilities went around the country and consulted wide broadly. We covered it live here. We had a conversation here with them. And so I'm curious to get some clarity on when they say they were not consulted. What exactly did they mean by that? And they have focused on utilities inefficiencies, which is well documented. So we indirectly are paying for the inefficiencies of the utilities. Government should consider subsidizing the cost of fuel as in what you consume. We've tried that before, and it plunged that into a lot of debt. And so governments over the years have stopped doing that. Now, look at the trend of base pay, and the organized labor is using the base pay conversation. That yes, you gave us 9%, which is what they're going to get in 2026, 9% base pay increase, and you've increased the utility tariffs by so much, right? 9% plus for electricity and 15% plus for water. Now, if you go to 2022, and I want to do this comparison very briefly, go to 2022, they got 7% increase at the time in 2022. Remember, that was also a year for major tariff adjustments. In that year, when the organized labor got 7% increase in their base pay, guess by how much the utility tariffs went up by, which I showed you earlier. Here, in 2022, electricity went up by 27.15%, and water went up by 21.55%. So compare that to what we have now, which is 9.86% for electricity and 15.92% for water. It pales in comparison. And then you also look at what happened in 2022 when it comes to the base pay, which is your fundamental argument. It was 7%. Again, lower than what they got this year with 9%. And so the organized labor, of course, historical facts presenting itself. I'll put that question to them. And again, when they were negotiating the base pay, they knew that the PULC was now beginning consultations on major tariff adjustment. Why didn't they insist on factoring this in the equation, the time that we're having a conversation with government as far as the base pay is concerned, right? And so that is a conversation that we need to have with organized labor tonight. We'll put that question to them. But again, you look at inflation. Government says, well, we are taming inflation. And in 2026, we're going to play around 8 plus or minus 2. And so that largely is keeping inflation in check. And so your base pay is not going to be eroded as much as before. So we are pricing that into the base pay calculations. But then you have all the measures the government wants to put in place, because really isn't enough, right? You have a huge debt burden that the government says they're putting in place a whole raft of measures to try and tame that beast called the energy sector debt. Then you look at the shortfalls, which is where the challenges begin, because the shortfalls in payments have become a huge problem for the energy sector. You have 15.2 billion shortfall that needs to be dealt with, and you're hoping that the tariff will deal with it. Now you have to ask ECG whether this tariff is enough to help deal with this, because ECG is at the end of collecting the money. If ECG says it's not enough, then fundamentally this 9% will not make a dent in this figure that you have there behind me. And then you look at the losses over time, which is the inefficiency question that the organized labor is saying. We're talking about some 35% when it comes to the ECG's rising power sales losses, 35% in 2024. So why are we paying for ECG's inefficiency? If you're losing 35% of the power they generate, that they distribute, they can't account for it. Why should I pay for it? It's a fair question that organized labor has asked. I will put to them also. And the question about ECG's own ability to raise revenue from what it sells, translating from the 35% loss, shows a dip, right, in how much they're able to collect. All that is what was factored into the computation for the tariff adjustment. Organized labor says no way. They don't want to hear that. We have the labor minister joining us tonight. We have the two utilities joining us tonight, water and electricity. We have organized labor. This is an all-encompassing conversation that affects your pocket. Let's unpack it after this. And thank you very much for joining us here on PM X-Rays. We're talking about something that affects all our pockets, but also affects our ability to run an efficient utility sector, both for electricity and water. So there's a balancing act that needs to happen between what we need to keep the lights on and the taps running, but also what won't make you go broke as a worker. And so you see that tussle between the organized labor and government, and then the utilities on the side. I think what has happened since last week when this new tariffs were announced, I haven't heard much from the utilities themselves. We heard a lot from them when the debate was happening around how much increase they should get. Now that they now have an increase, will it be enough? And we'll try and balance the various interests. And I'm delighted to say that the Labour Minister is with us, so he'll give us his own take on how he intends to deal with the agitations from organized labor. He addressed a news conference yesterday. And so welcome. PMS is always brought to you by Syntax Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. Also brought to you by Pepsodent Cavity Fighter. And as you know, if you're looking for the durable water tank, then you're looking for the tortoise sign. If you find it, then you found the right tank. That's the tortoise on the tanks, Syntax Tanks. It is a champion of water tanks. It is strong, it is durable, and built to handle Ghanaian weather, rain or shine. Syntax Tanks are strong and tough. And then before you sleep tonight, Pepsodent Cavity Fighter is what I recommend because, as you know, you have tooth decay possibly because of all the sugars and the eating that then traps all these substances in your mouth that then, if you don't brush properly, causes problems. So brushing your teeth every morning and night, your Pepsodent Cavity Fighter gives you your teeth the protection they need, leaving you with 10 times stronger teeth. Pepsodent, every smile matters. My guest tonight, Stanley Mate is the communications manager at the Ghana Water Company. He joins us on Zoom. Ebenezer Bading is the energy economist as the ECG. You remember him, he was on the show the last time they were before the ECG, PULC, making a case for an increase. Abdul Rashid Hassan Perpo is the Minister for Labour, Jobs and Employment, MP for WAS Central, joins us in the studio. And Dr. Shafiq Suleiman, Executive Secretary, Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PULC. I'm happy that we can have him because then he can explain a bit of what really went into this. And then Dr. Ken Cheneboa Kodria is the Vice Chairman of the all-powerful Trades Union Congress. I'm delighted to have all of them join me. I want to start with the PULC because they came to the conclusion that 9% was enough for electricity and just 15% plus was enough for water. And I'll start with the Executive Secretary. So if you may explain to us, first of all, let's start with electricity because that's the one that we all feel more directly. Water is life, but when the lights are off, that's what really, I call it the ultimate regime killer. It's when you have doom so. So we fear that more than lack of water. That's actually very strange, but it's our reality. So let me start with the situation with the tariff increases that we saw for electricity. How would you explain it in simple terms, how you arrived at the percentage increase you announced?
Okay, thank you, Evans, and good evening to my fellow panelists, and then good evening to your viewers as well. Basically, this is what we call the multi-year tariff review order, what we call the MITO. So every 3 years to 5 years, depending on the cycle, we at the PURC had to reevaluate the asset base of the utilities. So what we did, the last time this happened was 2022, and then it's been 3 years so far. So we've taken up the responsibility again as a commission per our act to as well review the regulated asset base of the utilities, look at their investments, that's short-term, medium-term, and most importantly, critical investments over the 3-year period, or this time around, we considered a 5-year period to see how best we can give them a reasonable tariff that will allow them to invest in critical investments or critical projects that are required to sustain the power and the utility value chain. So the multi-year tariff order actually just assess the investment requirement of the utilities, which we did through, and we also did a public consultation process to validate some of the investment requirement. We did all that, and then afterwards we requested the utilities to actually present their tariff proposals, which they did, requesting for extensive tariff increments or adjustment that they think is viable for them, for which you saw or we all witnessed over the past few months. For instance, ECG requested for 225% adjustment in the distribution service charge, Gridco around 97% for the transmission service charge, VRA requested for 56%, 57%, and then Ghana Water also requested for 280%. So the commission received all these inputs, and then we consulted with major stakeholders. We did the analysis, then using our internal methodologies, which we have published on our website and has made available to the public. We did all that, and we arrived at the 9.86% for electricity for the multi-year tariff order, and then we also arrived at 15% for water, so on average. Yeah. So this is what we went through, or this is what we did over the period.
So more directly for water and electricity, if you put it together, were you specifically looking at the issues around the forex? Were you looking at
No.
exchange rate? Were you looking at inflation? What were you looking at specifically?
Okay, so very important, because there's a difference between what we call the multi-year tariff order, the MITO, and then there's compared to the quarterly tariff adjustment. As much as the macroeconomic parameters are considered in the multi-year tariff order, it even extends further to the credit rating of the country. It also extends to the weighted average cost of capital. We did a lot of evaluations, including reassessing the regulated asset base of the utilities. So this particular period or this particular tariff is the MITO, the multi-year tariff order, which is done every 3 years to reassess the asset base of the utilities, more or less like a framework that allows the commission and the utilities service providers to consider huge or a window to allow them to invest to sustain the system.
Okay, so on that point of invest to sustain the system,
quarterly tariff.
Yeah, so you're saying that for this particular review, one of the primary objectives is to give the utilities some adjustment that allows them to invest to sustain the system.
Yes, please. So over the period.
In that case, then, I need to ask, 9.86% for electricity and 15.92% for water. Are these enough to get the ECG and the others in the chain and the water company to invest and to sustain the system?
That's a very important question, because, for instance, Ghana Water are not, the company and the services they are providing are agitating strongly as well that the 15% adjustment is woefully inadequate for them to be able to provide the services that they are required to provide over the period. But then, if the adjustment is also beyond what the consumer can pay, and looking at the current conditions, economic conditions, it also becomes a big burden on the consumer. So what the commission does is to assess these two balances: what the economic conditions can sustain in terms of meeting the interests of the consumer, and also what is adequately reasonable for the utility service providers to be able to also, use to sustain the provision of this very important service to the consumer. So we did a balancing act, and that is not easy at all, and further consultations to try as much as possible. But the most important issue, as I've indicated, is their investment. What the 15% did was to actually capture the most critical investments that Ghana Water, for instance, will require to be able to at least sustain their current operations, and possibly push them a little bit to also invest in new extensions, building new laboratories. The most important, building new laboratories to be able to test the quality of water that the consumer is getting at the pump at the end of, at every point in time. So we added some reasonable amount of investment that will allow them to be able to improve on their services, especially the laboratories that they requested for, and some pipe extensions. And most importantly, also the chemicals that they use to actually treat the water.
Okay.
So these are the investments that were considered in the MITO.
For the Ghana Water Company, you've made the point that what you approved for them, 15.92%, is woefully inadequate. Would you say the same for the ECG?
Yes, because looking at the investments that were proposed, very important investment, as I said, for this time around, what we did was to indicate to Electricity Company of Ghana and then Ghana Water, not only to bring investments that they would just want us to pass through the tariff, but they must indicate the outcome of the investment. Assuming they are building a BSP at this particular area, they must tell us the current load for the area, the benefit of the new investment, and most importantly, how will the new investment influence improvement of quality of service to the consumer? So they did that. Unfortunately, because of the economic conditions and the needs of the consumer, well, we couldn't allow all those investments to pass through the tariff.
Okay.
We have to carefully select the most critical ones. In fact, we have to reduce majority of their, as for the short long-term investment, we didn't consider them at all. We only look at the medium term, we took the most important, then the short term, and then most importantly, the critical investment. The long-term investment, none of them was accepted. Medium term and short-term investment, we only considered those that are ongoing, but all those that are yet to commence have also been taken out, and then we focus more on the critical investment, and that's what resulted in the 9.86%. But
Yeah.
you see, it will not be easy for them as well. They will also be having issues as to whether more should have been allowed, but it's a balancing act, as I said.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, and Dr. Suleiman, that really
balancing
offers
act.
us great clarity. And the Labour Minister is here. He said that this is the PULC itself, saying that, I'm coming to you now, that what he's given you, quote, woefully inadequate, but they need to think about the citizens. And yet, Labour says that, withdraw. So I'm gonna try and get the Labour's view on this. But let me hear your thoughts very quickly on the PULC's admission tonight on the subject. So he just laid it out.
So Evans, thank you very much. For us, PULC has done the balancing act. Yes, though we require a number, what they say is this is what consumers can afford. So we're going to now take whatever is being given and then work with it. We're supposed to do our best out of the revenues that we've been given. We are in a situation where investments were done. We've not been able to pay for it. Now we've been given some 9% or 10% for us to be able to recover part of this cost of this investment and pay for it. We're able to clean our books. I mean, we were very happy, for example, last month, Cash Waterfall was able to pay for most of the invoices that came from the upstream providers and then also the SOEs. So it's looking good. We'll work with what we have and then make sure that we please our customers somehow.
You say it's looking good. The PULC that examined it says it's woefully inadequate. They understand
where we are
that.
coming from and where we are today, we think that it can be better. It's better. Now, whatever we have, we take it, we work with it, and make sure that we deliver services to our customers. So we have a very positive outlook that we are looking at.
Okay, so to be clear, the just shy of 10% increase you got, it's enough for you?
It's not enough.
Okay.
But what we say is that always we go into some form of negotiations. Long-term investment.
You were looking for 25%
increase in the distributions.
and then what?
Now, maybe I should clarify the
exactly
as well. So he mentioned generation, transmission, and distribution. Now the ECG portion hadn't been looked at for a long time, so we were trying to rebase the ECG one. So that's why you see the highest increase on the ECG portion. Today they are yet to engage us and then tell us whose portion is where. But in all, when you put the 225% for ECG, the 56% for VRA, and then the up to 100% for grid crew, all comes up to 46%. So we're talking about a 46% adjustment that we put before PURC. And then PURC says, I'm doing
9.86%.
Now, it's also going with another situation where government of Ghana has renegotiated the generation cost. So generation cost is up to about 65 to 70% of the total build-up. And then this portion, government of Ghana did a lot of restructuring and renegotiation of the power contracts. So it's had quite some impact. And based on that, we're able to see quite some reduction in the generation component. So it's the distribution part, which is like 11% of what customers are paying. That we spoke about the 2.25% increase. So it's very small and not like a big share. So the 9.86%, I'm sure ECG is looking forward to getting a bigger share of that. Once we have that, we should be able to do more. In times past, look at the customer service centers, look at the automation. Now the Power App, you can report faults, you can do, and all these were some of.
But bottom line for us consumers, 9.86%. The PLC executive says the key consideration is you need money to invest and to sustain the system. Exactly. Is this enough to keep the lights on?
We will do our best to keep the lights on. As to whether it's
I note that you're not committing to saying it's enough to keep the lights on.
No, we have said it's not enough.
Okay.
But we will make sure the lights are on. And if we have to even borrow to make sure we finance such services, we will do that.
Stay with me. I want to bring in quickly the Ghana Water Company on this. Stanley, you had the PLC Executive Secretary make the point, admit that yes, what you got is woefully inadequate, but they had to do the balance and also lessen the burden on the ordinary man. And so that's what you got, 15% plus. Where do you stand on that, 15.92%?
Good evening to all members of the panel. And I think Dr. Suleiman has explained everything and explained very well. And he himself has admitted that the tariffs given to us this time around is inadequate. And so, and he also admits that he knows that it's very difficult for us to operate, but then under the circumstances, this is what they can give. So I think it explains everything. Yes, it is true, it is woefully inadequate, but we'll have to work and ensure that we serve our consumers efficiently. So as a company, we will keep doing what we know how to do best and ensure that we serve our people. My points will not be too different from what my colleague in ECG has just said. Yes, we all admit that it's inadequate, but it's always been same. Every time there's a formula for calculating the tariff, we'll input in all the parameters and come out with a figure. But then the PLC and its wisdom will also come out with some other parameters and then slash it down to a very low figure. I also think that because we are able to manage the organizations prudently, sometimes they take the system for granted. But then it is not an easy task working with the tariffs that we have. It's very difficult to do investments, even to manage operations. Okay, so if every time we have to continue like this, I don't know what the future holds. But like we always say, we'll do our very best to ensure that the system is...
Stanley, you have a peculiar challenge. You're dealing with the effects of Galamsey. It's increased your costs exponentially. And then you have this 15.92% increase that the PRC describes as woefully inadequate. Can you keep the taps on with the rate you have?
Okay, so for now, we have admitted every time that there's a gap between demand and supply. Now, to enable us bridge that gap, we need to do a lot of investments, including building new infrastructure like treatment plants, extending pipelines, and all that. These are capital intensive. And is this 15.9% adequate to enable us save enough money or to clear our books to enable us even go for a facility to expand our facility? That is impossible. So then we will try to keep the taps on, but then it can't be 24/7. Okay, let's admit that we can only keep the taps on 24/7 when we have built new treatment plants, when we've extended pipelines and all that. This tariff cannot do that. So it means that the little water in the system will have to be managed effectively. And we can only do that by the demand management program that we put across. Now, we will do well to...
Hello, Stanley. I may have lost his audio there on Zoom, but I want to quickly bring in, before I hear from the Minister on the subject of the labor, they are raising issues. Dr. Choneboa is with me, is with the TUC. And Dr. Choneboa, you've heard the PLC explain how they arrived at the increases. And the PLC admits that the reason why they did not give Ghana Water Company and the ECG what they were asking for, and they describe it as woefully inadequate, is because they were thinking about you. Having heard him explain and come to that conclusion, I wonder what your take is on the organized labor's position now. I believe we have lost him too. We'll try and get him back, but let me bring in Dr. Rashid Purpo into the conversation. I wonder what your reaction was when you listened to the PLC boss say, this is woefully inadequate, but we had to do that because we're thinking about the ordinary man.
Well, that's a very good point to make, an observation that testifies that the ordinary man is a man to watch. If a system operates well, it operates well because of the working population of the people, the labor the country has. And in doing what they are doing, what the PURC is doing, and taking due consideration of the total effect on the ordinary working person, is where we also stand. We care about them. We are a social democratic institution, party, and government, so we care about what would happen to the ordinary man. So we are listening to what they would say. We go along with them, and we have opened up room for consultations and for us to sit down over these things and see where we can move to in trying to surmount the challenges they face with such an increase in the utility services.
Okay, Dr. Choneboa is back. Dr. Choneboa is back with the TUC. Doc, I believe you heard the PLC boss explain that the increases that they have announced in utility tariffs are woefully inadequate, but they only woefully inadequate because they had to think about you, the worker, all of us. Do you have any sympathies, having heard him and having heard both Ghana Water Company and the ECG make the point that they can work with it, but it's not enough to invest and keep the lights on fully? Ghana Water Company says you can't expect 24-hour tap running. Do you have any sympathies there? Does that soften your stance at all on the matter of the tariffs?
Thank you very much, Evans, and good evening to viewers and listeners. Evans, obviously, I'm a Ghanaian, and I should have sympathy especially for Ghana Water, because of what we've all witnessed from the Galamsey effect on their operations. And so, yes, directly to your answer, yes, I sympathize with them. But Evans, it's also about ability to afford the utility. And I must say that if you look at the impact of utility increases on wage earned by employees over the past 5 years, I mean, if you interrogate the statistics, you will appreciate that the Ghanaian worker has, over the past 5 years, really sacrificed by way of erosion of his earned income to erosions. And I'm glad you outlined that even in your intro. That also tells the extent to which the poor worker has sacrificed over the years, allowing these tariffs to impact negatively on their wage. But worse, also it confirms that PURC and to a large extent government has not paid enough attention to the wage erosion being hitting on the poor workers' salary. So over the years, just utility increases has significantly impacted negatively on wage earned by workers. And so we're thinking that this time the consultative approach or process that we were engaging on would have given us the opportunity to interrogate these trend effects, so that together we see how we can mitigate that. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So yes, I and TUC we sympathize with especially with Ghana Water, but obviously it shouldn't be at the cost or lack of the Ghanaian worker.
So your position is what? Government should withdraw the announced tariff increases?
Evans, our position is that one, PURC by nature, by its creation, is a stakeholder board. It has consumers, it has industry, and it has workers on the board. And the premise of the law, they do that it enhances broader consortium. And so PRC started this process very well. And they met TUC in September. And then with them that room was general to tell us their plans. And so we'll be more grateful if we sit down with them at the technical level to interpret the figures that they were proposed. They agreed to this and then said they will come to us. In late November, they sent us a message that they want to engage us on 8 December on the tariff as agreed earlier on. Only for them to announce the tariff on 2nd December. And we felt that that was quite not in the spirit of fairness and mutual respect and corporate partnership. I've always tried to work along. And for us, that's a no-no for us. Also because whatever it is, it will worsen these effects I mentioned earlier. And when salary is I'll go in. So right from the beginning, we feel that PURs over the years had their way. They've done things that have affected the wage and employee, and the employees' wage and over the 5 years are eroded. And this year, we think that that should not happen with the background of the 9% that we've gone for. So, Evans, that is the scenario.
Okay, so again, specifically, what's your request now of government and PLC? Because the tariffs have already been announced.
Our request is that government should intervene. PURC must exhaust the consultative process that we were on so we can adequately and fairly look at the issues. For instance, Evans, let me a little. If you recall, third tariff increase. If you go to the PRC own website, their set guideline gives very 4 factors they consider: inflation rate, exchange rate, cost of gas, and then the energy mix. These factors are there because it allows for predictability. All stakeholders should be able to predict what would happen if these variables are considered. And for the first time in our last year, these variables were so favorable to consumer, such that rates should have come down by 2%. But somehow, PURC on their own introduced 2 new variables, what they call cost of reserve margin and then cost of liquid fuel. These 2 variables are not part of the variables that they have. What's in these 2 variables? It changed the scenario, and we all saw 2.4%, 2.45% salary utility increment in the 3rd quarter. Nobody questioned that. We allowed it to go, even though we raised red flags. But I think that in the spirit of ability and fairness, PURC should know that if their mandate is to protect the interests of both the consumer and the provider, same as TUC, our mandate is also to ensure that we put the economic interest and social interest of our members. So we have a common objective, and at all times we should be able to collaborate and do what is fair for us. So while we are asking that PURC should come back to the goal for us to exhaust this major tariff had cost of operations as part of their analysis, cost of maintenance, HR.
To be clear, you are opposed to the tariff taking effect until a conversation you've had a conversation with the PLC on the potential of what? Reducing the increases as announced?
If not increasing, what must be done to cushion the worker to be able to pay new tariffs without worsening plight?
Okay, so you're not necessarily opposed to clarity, because I want to bring the minister in. You're not opposed to the increases per se. You want to have a say in the determination of the actual increases. And if you can't do anything about it, then you want the government to provide you a cushion.
We want to be sure that the increases they are proposing are rightly so. We feel that some components can be looked at. For instance, the cost of operations, let's say Ghana Water. We know that obviously because of Galamsey, the cost of operations will go up. Mm-hmm. But Evans, the fair question to ask is, this cost, must you push all to the poor consumer because Galamsey have messed up our water? Or for instance, we can say that, let me absorb a portion of this cost. After all, consumer didn't cause it. And so that should be interrogated. Only that, there are other variables that should be interrogated so that together we come up with a framework that looks at. But if they cannot do that, then we are going to say, obviously, and we'll show with evidence that over the years, such tariffs without these consultations have worsened the plight of end income of workers.
Okay, so
especially when we had just gone for.
Yes, when you have gone for the base pay negotiations and you've agreed on the 8%, not 9%.
And Evans, let me tell you what we gave up during the negotiation.
Yeah, I mean
during a heavy negotiation, there's something we call best alternative negotiated agreement. This is what showing your fallback. For this negotiation, we let go that fallback because we trusted that nothing will come on top to erode our income. And so we let go our back. So if PRC will not come to the table for us to exhaust what they've done, if it is fair that the rate announced is what it be, why not? We'll let our members know this is the, yet we'll let the government also know that this will be the implication of this new rate for the poor worker. And that I think fair to all parties.
Okay, and we'll try and rectify some distortions in this audio so we can get clarity there. But Dr. Rashipopo, you've heard the case they've made. I wonder whether you've met them since the press conference a couple of days ago.
Oh, no, we've not met them. And they know there's a way open for them in the course of our negotiations in the base salary and minimum wage. We open up a way during which we can have interactions before the next period when we sit down to talk about minimum wage or base pay. That extended period before we take decisions to have meetings is now by my new policy, government new policy, to break the length of time to open up for negotiations and talking even before that time. It allows smooth interaction, and it's able to address key challenges like these before they erupt into something else. So indeed, I was a little shocked to hear that they were already at a press conference when we needed to have spoken. But I do understand them. Like I said earlier, I mean, we do understand workers, and we want to see that workers are properly situated whilst they attend to work, and we all work towards achieving the best in our economy. In the present circumstance, I have spoken to PURC, I've spoken to the TUC leadership, some TUC leadership, and we came to a conclusion that they are yet to have full understanding of what has happened. They're yet to have interaction with the PURC. PURC also said their doors are not fully closed. They can still talk. It is important for us all to know that we are working towards one objective, to move this nation forward and to make sure in doing so we feel comfortable in what we do. You know, you can imagine the huge percentages of increases that were demanded by the water company and the ECG. And NEDCO, and what we came to, they came to even less than 10%. It shows a lot of consideration, which is what we want to say, that even though there's a need for us to up our game in our water, in delivery of water and power, you know, PURC did not overblow the percentage of increase given to the utility services.
Do you admit the point you make that in the base pay negotiations, they gave up a lot? In fact, they compromised significantly because they were assured that they would not be surprised down the line with any additional beddings, and that is why they agreed to the 9%.
On the part of
only for the PURC and government necessarily then to now spring this.
Remember, PURC is self-regulated now. Government doesn't take decisions for them. And besides that, what we assured them still stands, that we are not going to surprise them with increases in taxes. We'll work towards achieving a control inflation.
Except that the tariff is actually a form of a tax.
It's a form of a tax, but directly not controlled by government. The taxes we do, for example, if government places a tax on something, it has a total effect on the income of the earner. For example, if government says that there's going to be an increase in salary or increase in minimum wage or base pay, it has a total effect on the premium of the income they are receiving. If water company has an increase in its tax, in its utility service value, and of course it's a form of tax, it's going to have an increase in the subset of the totality of the income. I hope you understand that. If I earn $100, 100 Ghana cedis a month, and there's a 9% increase in my salary, I'm going to get 109 cedis at the end of the month. And I pay, let's say, out of the 100 cedis, I pay 7 cedis for water, and the water company has increased by 9%. The 9% is not going to be on the 109 cedis I now get. It's going to have an effect on the 7 cedis I pay out of the total of 109. So the effect is going to be minimal on the subset, not in the principal. So what government promised to do is that we are not going to have an increase or any surprises that is going to temper with the total amount they receive on a monthly basis. Yeah. But
nonetheless, as your analysis show, they will still have less than what they would have had without the increases.
No doubt about that.
So they're asking for a cushion. Would you give them a cushion?
No doubt about that.
Cushion the impact on your pocket, no matter how negligible that is.
Well, remember, this was as a result of a long negotiation, and we came to that conclusion. We are still open to talking. We are still open to addressing challenges as they occur. And our expectation is that when these things occur, we can't halt the budget and decide, to go back. It has to be done progressively within a period of space of time. So that's the reason why before the budget is done, we want to see the figures of the base pay. We want to see the figures of the minimum pay before the budget is read. Once the budget is read, it becomes, it will lapse a year, within a financial year, before anything can be done.
We had a situation in the past in our history where budget was read, but there was cost of living allowance, which is called COLA, that was introduced sometime because government had understood that, we didn't factor in the stuff like the major tariff increase, and so let's cushion you a bit. Is that possible?
You know, when we remember, we came from the structural adjustment program within which these things were all possible. We have moved away from that. We are now setting our own standards and doing our own financial regulations and systems. So it's no longer possible to do that. But we can do it within a period when the budget is back to us. We can always do anything. Government has, the power to do anything once we come to negotiations and agreement that this is all what we want. This is what we want. Workers agree, government agrees, employers agree. We can always come to a certain conclusion. In other words, it is not possible for the minister to now say we will do it, because we will do it depends on the tripartite committee's agreement, where we are going to work towards, and we are opening up to them and saying, look, let's get back the three, let's get back together, let's examine this, let's see how it goes. But before we even get there, I'm encouraging them to continue talking with the PURC to see where we land, at which point we can then come in to see how that can be negotiated.
Yeah, and I'm delighted to say that we will have the Executive Secretary of the PLC with us. I'm going to take a break. We're going to return. I need to ask him, is there room to renegotiate the tariffs as announced? Because it appears I'm hearing the organizers say, we want to sit down with you again and look at the numbers and the factors that led to the conclusions that you arrived at, and possibly they don't believe that the figures as announced is really where it should land, because if you're looking at the macroeconomic indicators, they actually make a case that you should have a reduced. Remember, they said major tariff adjustment is not major tariff increase necessarily. So you can actually reduce, stay the same, or increase. The argument is that they believe the numbers, if you look at it and apply strictly, Ghana Water Company should not even be getting the amount they got, which is said is woefully inadequate. I'll ask the Executive Secretary that question, and the ECG and Ghana Water Company also have to weigh in on the labor's analysis there. If you look at the cost lines, he says 2 additional line items have been introduced that were not fair, were not originally factored into it. I'll ask their thoughts on this also. Stay with me up to this. And thank you very much for staying with us. We're having a big conversation about the utility tariffs. Labour is raising concerns about the announced increases. But we've heard the utilities also say it's not enough. Not even the utilities themselves, but the PURC have said it's not enough. But they have to do that fine balancing act between protecting the pocket of the ordinary consumer and also ensuring that the lights are on and the taps run. I want to bring in Dr. Shafiq Suleiman, who is the Executive Secretary of the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. They did the analysis and they came to the conclusions. Doc, you heard Dr. Chonebo Akodria, the Vice Chair of the TUC, make the point that they want to sit down with you again and analyze your conclusions and the variables that led to the conclusions that you reached. Is the PURC open to sit down with organized labor?
Thank you, Evans. But let me reiterate this fact that I stated earlier on. I mean, relative to what has been approved for Ghana Water, the 15%, compared to what they requested, that's the 280%. That's where I said it's much more lower, because they were requesting for a 280%.
Yeah.
But then the analysis gave out, and then the consultation resulted in 15%. That made it relatively not as adequate as what they were requesting for, and also compared to even the investment that they were requesting for. And it's the same for ECG. But on the consultation, I mean, TUC is a critical stakeholder in the processes of PURC, to the extent that we have a strong representation of TUC at the activities of PURC, and we consistently want to engage them at all times. I mean, fortunately for us, they are not too far from the PURC building itself, so we try as much as possible to engage. Consultation is not a one-time event. It's actually a continuous process.
But so I guess the point is, post the announced increases, will you engage them?
So as we are talking now, we are the post announcement. The issues that are coming up now requires that we further engage, and it's also an indication of the acceptance rates of the tariff from key stakeholders. So it raises a concern. That means that the Commission needs to further engage and go back to TUC and do further consultation
But here's the question. You're going to be engaging to what end? Are you open to reviewing the announcement, the tariff increases?
No, as you've indicated, the executive secretary is part of a whole commission, and that's the board. That's a group of commissioners that makes the decision as the conversation is going on. The engagement has been agreed that we would go back and have a conversation with TUC, which as I indicated, are a very important and a critical component of the stakeholders that we have as a commission. So the engagement will continue and it will start as soon as possible. The decision of whether or not it will have an impact on the tariff is not in my hands as the executive secretary. It's actually in the hands of the commission.
But knowing the way the commission works, knowing the way the commission works, is that even a possibility that after the tariff adjustments have been announced, the commission rules, regulations, protocols allow for a review of that, even if conversations happen and the PUC manages to convince you that your percentages are wrong? Is that even allowed?
It's a consultation, and we are looking at a win-win conversation. It's how best we are able to convince, or we engage TUC with the utility service providers to convince TUC the risk that we have apparent in our hands if we don't consider the investments that the utilities require. So we'll engage them and try our best to convince and engage them properly, and to convince them to appreciate the issues that we have. But as I said, it's a conversation that I don't want to even preempt anything. And the decision of a tariff does not sit in the hands of. It's a very broad consultative process arriving at the decision.
And the TUC says that your consultation of them was inadequate and that you have assured them that you're going to sit so that they can, at the technical level, examine your numbers. And that didn't happen. And then the next thing they had, you've announced the tariffs.
Yes, that's what I indicated. TUC is actually a part of the board, okay. And the decision-making process, as I indicated, gave us an option to talk to all stakeholders. And if you remember, we even called the media.
Yes.
In fact, the level of stakeholder engagement we've done for this MITO is unprecedented. I mean, we're able to consult extensively. As I indicated, TUC is top priority part of our stakeholders. We've done an initial consultation not too long ago. We've opened up, we've made the utilities to make their presentations to convince TUC and other stakeholders the reason why they are requesting for the tariffs that they propose, the initial 280%, 225%. And I mean, the conversation was not really fully settled. But the process must go on. That's how we look at it. The process was going on and on. And I mean, we could continue with the consultation. That's why I'm saying that we would continue with doing that until there's a level of acceptability and a win-win.
Okay.
Post-tariff adjustment.
Stay with me. Let me get Dr. Tunebo. I could just take quickly on that. So you have an assurance on the PUR's executive secretary that they'll meet you. They'll open your books. You'll talk until you have a win-win. Satisfactory, is it not?
All right, Evans, this is welcoming, but like you asked, to what end? I pray that they really open up for us to set not only because we feel that their figures are wrong, but its impact on the worker must also be looked at. Even tariff adjustment is both science and an act. The science gives you the figures that we looked at, the matrix. The art looks at the socioeconomic environment and other indicators that you cannot measure scientifically. And so it is always important that you blend these two in this process. If you always look at the scientific or the variables in the matrix, you get it wrong.
But they have done that, right? Isn't that what he's been explaining? That's the reason why they have such low percentage increases for both water and electricity.
Evans, would you imagine what this country would have been if the earlier proposal they brought, which was 200% for Ghana Water, I'm sure the Minister of Labour salary increment, he wouldn't have even entered the hall. Yeah. Because if they brought 200% and that was accepted, Labour would ensure that 200%, its effect on salary will not be negative. And you can imagine what would have happened. And so we are saying that, yes, we would engage, but they should also bear in mind that whatever it is, and even I'll one day come to your studio and show you the effect of tariff increments on wage, and for the past 5 years, you'll be amazed the erosion that has happened to earn income of Ghana workers. And let's not think of only public servants. There are pensioners who are going to retirement whose income is meager. This tariff will affect them. There are informal workers who earn 500 cedis, 600 cedis. There are artisans.
Yeah.
So it's not just those of us or those in the formal sector. It goes beyond it. And for once, TUC is determined that the matrix or whatever has been eroding our income as a result of these tariff increments, for once, want to address it.
Okay, and Eben, he also raised some fundamental issues about, he almost seemed to suggest that the increase you got, which he says was inadequate in itself, is not reflective of what should be. And that if you look at the macroeconomic indicators, it shouldn't be 9%.
Okay, so what it says is that this adjustment doesn't look at macroeconomic indicators. There is the quarterly adjustment that will look at exchange rates, inflation, and then other, the fuel mix and all. But this is structural adjustment, 3 to 5 year adjustment. And it's looking at the investments you've done over time, all the debts you have incurred to clean your books, and then now reset you again for the next MITO. So this is what effectively the case has been. New projects have been commissioned, they are running and has to be paid for. The digitization drive, for example, of ECG has transformed our operations significantly. Now today, customers can buy credits without even going out of their homes. You can recharge at home and all. Now these are all the effects of some of the investments that have happened. Services, we will continue to deliver services, quality services to customers. But it gets to a point where you will need that push from customers. So as we sit here, the 9.8, we say it's not adequate. But what can we do? We should now use it to still deliver the same services for customers. So this is what basically we are up to.
You hear the PLC say they're willing to meet again on the matter. You also want to be in the room?
No, but we are members of TUC, so POO is utility.
That's true.
Well, yes, so we are already members, and they know the state of our networks and our operations. So I see this dialogue as more forward-looking. What next? How do we plan or structure some of these engagements and then adjustments? So I see it more forward-looking.
I mean, Dr. Purple, what role are you going to be playing in this conversation that is going to happen? ULC is very open to having a conversation. What role is the government going to play here? Because ultimately, they say if ULC doesn't want to do it, then you have to provide the cushion.
Well, as you may guess, government is very curious about what is going to happen. We are watching, and we are speaking to PURC, we are speaking to Labour as well. And we want to make sure there's close understanding of what has happened, that each of us will take our stance, and labor continues to work as effectively as we know them to be doing, and government will continue to honor the promises we have made to them. And that's why we're encouraging the two to continue to talk, PURC to have more closer conversation with labor, so that they can arrive at a conclusive situation where they understand each other very closely. Because government's intervention will be a long-term effect, will have a long-term, it will result after a long period of running a budget which has just been approved, or which is just going to be approved. And so changing in figures there will have a consequence of having a total effect on the figures that we put out already. So we are praying that this thing will resolve soon, that we don't have to intervene in any form that will offset the situation PURC is putting across, or that will unbalance the labor demands, But we are out there making sure that we play a positive role in getting labor to understand and be able to move. In fact, we have always been lucky. I have always been lucky to see that labor not just want to work along, but also willing to sacrifice a little, which is normal for every Ghanaian to do now. That as we go along, there comes a time when you need to sacrifice a lot for the general good of the people. And I find the working, labor at all classes, at all levels, come to a point when they seem to appreciate the situation we face ourselves. Yeah. And I want to commend them. At the beginning, when we take over this economy, we told them the challenges we were facing. We told them the difficult nature of the economy, which is still having some effects in the present situation. And they get to understand the situation, and we're willing to go along with us. And you've seen it in the increments that we negotiated and agreed on. I want to encourage them to continue. Building a country is not as easy as that. And there is a question we ask ourselves: should we spend 47% of our total revenue in paying compensation for people who are less than 1 million? Or should we increase it to 50%? Should we increase it to the 65%? These are all possibilities depending on how much requests they are making in increases in...
If you factor in the tariff increases, would you say that the base pay agreement shortchanged the worker?
It will be difficult to give you a direct answer to that. Maybe we don't call it shortchange, but we look at it as a question. How will it have a total effect on the worker? Is it going to be a direct consequence of deliberately hurting the income of workers and creating a problem for them? How can it be adjusted with government intervention in future? How can the PURC, have a conversation that will result in workers not feeling such change? The negotiation that went on, including the influence of the PURC, that resulted into the 9.8%, was because of many of the indicators they brought to fore, which enabled them to come to reality and found and presented what we have today. So I think that it shouldn't be looked at in a negative form. Yeah. Okay.
And that there is Dr. Rashid Popo. You had Chenebo Akodria, who is the vice chair of the TUC. You also had the executive secretary of the PURC. I'm delighted that he joined us with clarity on this. Stanley Mate dropped off the line earlier. We lost him on the line, but he's made the point about they're going to manage with what little they have. And Ebenezer Bading is the energy economist at the ECG. He also is walking the same line, actually. He's also going to manage with what they have. The conversations are beginning with the PURC, and labor. We'll see how that plays out. The Executive Secretary has let it open a bit, saying they need a win-win. But this is a very tricky area now. A win-win post the announcement. It's going to be very interesting how they arrive at that. But we'll follow and keep a close eye on this conversation. And once we have that update, we'll bring that to you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.